Hey everybody, welcome to episode 59 of the Is That Normal podcast, and welcome to 2021.
Yes, it's a new year and some new things going on, and we're just super excited.
Hopefully the dumpster fire is behind us.
Hopefully so. Hopefully we can start taking a deeper breath and moving into some new things. But we here at Is That Normal, the podcast, have some cool things coming up. Yeah. We're excited about what's going on. Yeah.
So we've got we've got some new social platforms that we've launched: Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. We've got accounts on there, and so we'll be posting content on there. We're going to an every other week format for our full podcast. So instead of weekly, we're going to do every other week. But in between, on those avenues, and also on our website, the isthatnormal.org, we'll be posting some clips from some podcast and some just supplemental content that we think will be relevant and maybe a little quicker to consume as you go about your day, and that hopefully will be relevant to you.
Right. And it just continues to push that goal and purpose we have, which is to resource parents and adults who are trying to influence teens and young adults.
Yes.
And to do that, we do want it to be a connective thing. So some of that supplemental stuff is going to be, we want to connect with you and connect you to each other. We really want to foster a sense of community about what we're doing, because I know a lot of our listeners are here at our church, but we've got other listeners other places, but we're all in this together, and we want to foster that sense of community. And so we want to hear from you on this journey as we do this together. We do have an email that you can contact us with now, connect@isthatnormal.org. You can also comment and post on all of those platforms that we're talking about, and connect with us there. And we just want to know what's going on, how this is helping you, what else you need to help you. We're going to do some things this pretty soon this year to get some feedback through our email subscriber list. So if you're not on our email subscription list, get on that. There's links on our posts and on our website, isthatnormal.org, to do that. And we're going to be asking you to help us with ideas on content. So again, we just really want this to be not just a two-way
conversation.
Yeah, we want to be a conversation. Well said. So make sure you sign up and subscribe and like and follow and all those other things you're supposed to do.
Right. So as you said, we've got lots of fun and great things ahead. And with that in mind, today we wanted to share the top 8 trends that we see coming this year that parents should be aware of.
Yeah. So Randall, life is changing very fast. It has been that way for a while, but this last year we've really seen an acceleration of that even. And so maybe for you over the last 12 months, what are some of the big changes or challenges you've seen?
Man, there's been so many, like everybody, just obviously spending a lot more time at home or in a smaller bubble of people, changing our routines to and some of that has been difficult. Some of it's been really good. Some of it's been a little bit of a reset and things. But just our daily routines. My wife and I are both working from home now most of the time, and so that's great. But it's also unique, and everything is just different. And so we've had to just a lot of adjustment to that, and even just being able to interact with other people and see other people and, figure out how to navigate ways to do that maybe differently than we have in the past.
Yeah. There's just so much change going on. I read a lot. I follow a lot of leaders and organizations. I listen to several podcasts, and usually almost all of them really over the last several years have always kind of published these, trends they see coming up in the future kind of posts in whatever content area that they're specific in. And it used to be, sometime in December or January, they post it for the whole year. But I've watched over this last year, they've gotten to where every couple months or so they're posting the new trends and then the new trends, because things are changing so fast and people are trying to get a handle on, those marketplace changes, those social changes, family dynamic changes, educational changes, like all of these things, and trying to figure out what that looks like. And so, for us today, we want to help parents figure out how to navigate that and the things that particular are to teens and young adults.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we don't have a magic 8-ball
No.
or anything like that, but we wanted to share today some of the things that we know that are going on right now with teens and young adults that we feel like it's important to make sure that you as parents are aware of.
Right. One thing that we have that's going on before we get into the 8 is, just to know that as I love to study generations and talk about this, and they call them different things depending on who you read, but everyone's talked about the millennials for so long, and there's some young adults that are still solidly in that millennial category, but the teens and very young adults that we are particularly talking about are a new generation that they call Generation Z, and there's a big dramatic shift between millennials and Generation Z, and so what's happening is a lot of times we're still trying to figure out and get a handle on millennials, and we're treating teens and young adults the way we treated millennials, but we know they are a very different generation, the generation before them. Not all good and not all bad. They're just different. And so some of these trends that we're going to talk about today are just maybe to help us see kind of where that new generation is at. Because one thing that's definitely happening and is going to be happening all through 2021 is normal is being redefined.
Yeah.
Which we're excited about, right? Because that's kind of what we're all about here, right? Be abnormal.
I was going to say, that by name, that's what we're about.
And so, we've known for a long time that going with the flow, doing what culture's doing is not the right thing to do. So how do we raise teens and young adults to live a healthy, different viewpoint than just the norm? And so this is a glad thing that we're really glad about, seeing is that we're able to evaluate and pioneer a new normal. And to do that, we've got to be proactive as parents and adults in helping this next generation navigate what the right choices are as they make their own normals. So, the second thing that we see coming up, and again, I've said this over and over again, this last year, COVID-19, pandemics, all that has not created as many new problems as it has magnified existing problems. And mental health issues, isolation, and loneliness are on the rise.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And even as this pandemic recedes, we're going to see mental health issues be the bigger health crisis, I think, that we're going to be dealing with. And again, this didn't happen overnight. This didn't happen because of a pandemic. It was just accelerated from a pandemic. I was looking back as I was researching for this episode and reading back over some of those podcasts and blogs that I read and follow and their trends the last couple of years. And back in January of 2020, one of the guys I follow said, people are staying at home more. And people are feeling more isolated, and that was before the pandemic happened. So that was already a trend that he saw coming, and that we had been experiencing, but now it's been accelerated, and so we got to figure out how to handle that.
And the we're months and months now into this pandemic, and I think right now we're just beginning to see some of the effects that now what initially looked like it might be weeks or a couple of months now is a long-term sustained significant uprooting and changing of what our lives and our routines look like, and for a lot of people significantly more amounts of isolation, and I think we're just now beginning to start to see some of the effects of that, and I think that's going to continue as the year goes on.
Anxiety was already a huge deal. It's greatly on the rise. There's record numbers of diagnoses of clinical depression. We've seen suicide rates go up. We are seeing people become more introverted and say that that's because that's how they're designed, and yet they begin then being really unhealthy in that and feeling like nobody cares for them, and it just creates this cycle. And so we're going to have to do some work on both being good question askers, good evaluators, good listeners, and then I think we have to also be really proactive to helping young people say, hey, it's better to get help when you're not super sick than to wait until you're super sick to get it. So there's nothing wrong with getting some advice, getting some professional counseling, even if we don't feel like it's changing our life, so where I can't live, but it is a problem I'm dealing with. Let's get ahead of that. And so so that's the biggest thing I probably say to parents and adults is, as you ask those questions, if you see that a child is struggling even a little bit with this, hey, seek some avenues to help them get some perspective, seek some counseling. I think that would be really good. Our third trend, number 3, something we see going on this next year, is that we live in a blaming culture, and that's going to continue to be really hot topic. I was reading again in some research for this, and there's a term I found that I'd not heard of before. So we've all heard of DIY, right?
Right. Do it yourself.
Do it yourself. But there's a new term emerging called DIFM. Do it for me. And this is crazy because they gave a really simple example in the article I was reading about sliced apples, and that people, especially even younger people, will go and spend 3 times as much on a bag of sliced apples than a bag of unsliced apples. When, man, get a knife and do that yourself. Yeah. But it that's just a symptom of this mentality that someone's going to swoop in and fix this for me. Someone else is responsible for me, and not taking personal responsibility. We've really got to help our young people see that their decisions and their responses to other people's decisions are their responsibility. Nobody made you react or act the way you're acting. Sure, people may be doing things that aren't healthy or not helpful, but that doesn't give you the license to make bad decisions. And so really pushing young people to evaluate their decisions, I think, is going to be a huge
and that is
this year.
That is really the opposite of a lot of the messaging and things that our society and culture is telling people right now. Is almost anything you look at across the board is telling us, whatever way you feel or whatever way you want to act, it's okay. You're justified in that because someone's done something to give you an excuse to feel that way.
Right. Absolutely.
And so it's so counter to every other message that our kids are hearing, but it's so much more important because of that.
Right.
For us to be very intentional in that.
Yeah. And we both know, I think, to be healthy, to be people who are self-confident, and be people who can truly look to other people's needs and be a compassionate person, I have to be willing to own myself and my own decisions and take responsibility for myself. And that blaming culture doesn't accomplish that.
No.
Fourth trend that we see coming up this year is that gender issues are going to continue to rise. Mm-hmm. I was watching a show on Disney Plus with my kids about Marvel Comics the other night, and this person came on there, and they were a designer, and they did several things in the comic world. And then just out of the blue, they start talking about how that they don't believe that the traditional gender pronouns fit with them, and they prefer they as a pronoun for themselves, and went through this whole diatribe about their gender fluidity. And I'm like, this is like on a kids like Marvel Comics show, and just that is just everywhere. And every time you turn on the TV, you see that agenda. Every time you read an article, you're seeing that issue, and that's not going to go away.
Right. And it's there was a time where that was kind of on the fringes, and now it's mainstream. I've seen more huge corporations, Christmas commercials or whatever that are very intentionally and specifically highlighting those things this year than we've ever seen in the past. And it's, I mean, you can't even, you don't necessarily have to be on a cable network or a streaming platform. I mean, you can go on network TV and see all day long. And
it's permeating our culture. Yeah. It is. That message is anyway. And even more than that, as they're doing research on Generation Z, 48%, so listen to this stat carefully, all right? So 48% of Generation Z think that gender is defined by your biological setup at birth. So what does that mean? That 52% don't believe that. The majority of Generation Z does not believe that how you're born defines your gender. So we've got an uphill battle on talking about those issues with our kids. And I think what's really tough is that as older generations who are faith-based people, they tend to have several responses, but a lot of them are like, well, I disagree with that. I don't believe that. I don't understand that. So I don't want to deal with that. And that cannot be the way we handle this. I just want us to see that this is an ongoing discussion. It is permeating our culture, and the tide is turning, that the majority of the next generation is believing that message. And so if we don't deal with it, if we don't listen, if we don't push and lean into this topic, we are not going to be an active part of their formation on this belief, because the message is coming across to them from the other perspective. And so we have to be very active. And it has to be more than just that's wrong because I said so. It
Yeah.
has to be more than because the Bible said so. Not that the Bible's not the authority on this, but we have to help them flesh that out and figure that out and help them become a part of letting them answer that question through those channels rather than trying to answer it for them.
And one of the things that I've even seen is partly because of Christians as a whole, at times our silence and unwillingness to get into the middle of that. There are other people out there who maybe don't speak for the majority of the faith-based, population, but because they're willing to speak out and have a louder voice than the rest, they're speaking out, portraying themselves to be a part of the bigger faith, Christian evangelicals, and saying, "Oh, this is okay. This can exist in conjunction with what the Bible says and what things are, and those are amplified just because they may not be speaking on behalf of the rest, but sometimes our silence amplifies those voices.
And I think the hardest thing in a lot of this is, again, we're transitioning as we are parents of teens and young adults from like when they're children, you tell them a way, you teach it to them, and they're supposed to accept that from you. But in these years, we have to start teaching them how to think for themselves, to make their own choices. And so, one thing I talk about with my kids a lot is everything. You have to measure everything against a standard. So what standard are you going to measure this against? And so how would you evaluate this topic based on the standard that you are basing your life on? And so help them put those questions out there, force them to answer this question for themselves, even if there's some uncomfortable responses in that process. We have to be willing to keep pushing that issue and say, hey,
absolutely.
Hey, you've got to make a decision about how you're going to base the standards of your life. And so it's tough, but it's a good discussion that we need to have. And that goes way broader even than just that one topic. That just tends to be a loud topic for this generation.
Absolutely.
So, fifth trend, they have only ever known a post-Christian society. And that's a little bit of a tag on to that last trend. But what does that mean, post-Christian? It means we live in a society where fewer people are attending church and holding traditional Judeo-Christian values. Like it's not that we sometimes people have used the term unchurched. It's not that people are unchurched. It's that I've heard that message about Jesus and that's good for you, but that's not good for me. That's what post-Christian is like. And as we again talk about some statistics on Gen Z, 78% of Gen Z says that they believe in God. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean they believe in the true God of the Bible, but they believe in God. But only 41% of them are attending church. Even as young people, that means that their parents probably aren't attending either. And so we've got a lot of spiritually minded people who don't know how to navigate what that looks like, and we just have to help our children through that. Number 6, they are on-demand content consumers. So tell me what that means, Randall.
So they are they're used to being able to go and find whatever they want, whenever they want it, instantly. Right. Instant access to everything, always.
But not necessarily when you want to give it to them.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. YouTube is kind of wavers, but is either the top or the second highest used search engine in the world. Even though it's a video platform, that's where kids go to find their answers, their content. We're using that as search engine. TikTok. Crazy. My children, I think they would spend 18 hours a day watching TikTok videos if I'd let them. Yeah. They're just always looking for, and they're following people. It's not just about the funny content. They're are following people and they're feeling like closeness to these anonymous people on TikTok that they follow. It's a really unique thing. And then you got Instagram and Pinterest and all these other platforms out there, but they're out there constantly consuming content that they choose when they choose it. And I think as parents, that's a really interesting thing that we need to be aware of. Another thing that I've noticed is that Generation Z particularly is more likely to consume audio content. I know a lot of kids who listen to books on Audible or other services like that. It's the book is read. It's an audio book. More kids are listening to podcasts, but they're listening to entertainment podcasts for the most part. Things that are funny, things that are compelling, and then constantly a playlist. Like in my house, like we have to force our kids to listen to communal music because they all want to put their earbuds in and listen to their own playlist 24/7. We say, hey, you don't have to have your own personal playlist going 24/7. So
something else that I think is interesting, kind of when you talk about that on-demand content and YouTube, TikTok, some of those things, not only are they going on and searching for things, but the more they do that, there's the rabbit hole that I call it, where based on what they see, then other things are put in front of them, whether that's at times that's advertising, that's marketing content, and other times it's it leads down tons of rabbit hole. I mean, how many times even for us you go down, you look at something and then you get recommendations of other things, and so I think that's something we have to be aware of.
Well, like you said, a lot of that is being controlled by algorithms and connections that are monetized, and so people are forming our kids' habits, their spending habits, their belief structures, based upon those rabbit holes that are being controlled by somebody, and so that, so that leads me to say, so what's our response as parents need to be? Well, we have to help monitor and curate the content that they're consuming. I mean, like 100%. Like that's our job as adults, is to monitor how much and what it is and where it's taking them and what they're learning from it. Because, as a parent, I want to help my children form a healthy, God-based, spiritual, truth-based worldview. Right. Like that's what I want to do. Well, if they're listening to whoever on TikTok for 24 hours a day, that's who's forming their worldview. Absolutely. And so we need to be in there, and so we got to ask hard questions. We got to get the passwords to accounts and phones. We got to make that, we've talked in the past, we've got a policy at our house, I can ask for a phone anytime. I've got to have access to your information. We do a lot of shared accounts, so I can watch and monitor. Right. You got to be, and it's not a set and done. Yeah. Like you don't just say, okay, we set that, that's good. No, you got to ask tomorrow and the next day. Yeah. And
because I've heard multiple parents of even younger kids, say, I couldn't believe what I saw. My kids watching this video, and I'm like, how in the world, and a 7 or 8 year old didn't go looking for some of the something that they might be watching, but again, one thing leads to another, and they end up there, and so it's important to just know what they're watching and consuming.
Our 7th trend for 2021 is just this statement: I'm my own brand. So again, Randall, can you help me out with that?
Do you have a brand? So everything, again, it kind of goes back to these what we call influencers, people online that have accounts and that people follow, and like you said, this unique dynamic of feeling like you have close relationships. But so many people have become famous or well known strictly because of something, the content that they put out online that people started following and have gained vast amounts of influence, really in some cases with very little credentials to back that up. And so I've a lot of young people see that model and go, well, I have to have a brand. I have to have what gives me influence that people are going to want to see or consume, and that defines who I am or what I'm known for. And so that's maybe always been a little bit of an issue, but it's so much different now, especially
it's this whole concept of becoming internet famous, right?
Absolutely.
And before there were so many channels you had to go through to become an influencer, whether you're in the music world or the entertainment world or whatever, and now it's this is the avenue to that, and there's genuine stories of people who no more than sitting in their bedroom making ridiculous content have become people who are on movies that are in these industries of entertainment and influence, and kids think, well, I'm supposed to be like them. That's the path, and you don't have to go any further than asking a kid to take a picture to see that process happen, because when you take a picture with a young person, they got to know it and they got to pose for it, and then they got to curate what you've taken, because this is about my image that is so important to me, because I'm creating a brand of personality that I think is what's defines me. And so we have to be aware that that's happening, and help them find their identity in healthier ways. That's not to say that they can't be doing creative things. I mean, we try to use some of those mediums to help our kids do creative things, and that's good. I love the creativity, but we got to see that that's not our identity. And so as parents, we have to really help them navigate
because
that.
when we talk about brand, that is less about me discovering who I really am and more about me trying to figure out who other people, what other people want me to be.
Yeah. So. And then number 8, our last trend of 2021 is that they don't feel safe talking in traditional platforms. And so, so much of what we do is we want to talk about creating conversation, about creating influence in our children's lives, about going on this journey together and all these things. But that all comes down to communication. And the reality is that kids don't talk and don't feel safe talking, maybe in some of the usual platforms that we see. They tend to not be where their parents' generation are. And I've read some stats. There's some give and take on this, but there's a lot of young people who are not on the same social media platforms that their parents are. And they're constantly hopping social media platforms, partly because they're into the new and the novel, but partly because they don't want to be where the older generations are at, because they want some anonymity, they want some distance from that. And slang is on turbo. Oh my goodness. Like, I cannot tell you how many times I'm in a setting and I've got teens in my house. I do a lot of research. I'm in youth ministry, so I catch a percentage of the lingo. I know I'm not as savvy as I could be, but they're talking, and the other adults in the room have absolutely no idea what the kids are saying. Like zero idea. There's no frame of reference for them because language is constantly evolving, because they're constantly being influenced by new content that they're consuming. And so I think we have to be like super sleuths at asking good questions, trying to figure out where things are going, trying to create those opportunities. I know we try to create rhythms in our house, mornings, meal times, some of those kind of things where we make everyone sit down and we kind of have a conversation and tell me what's going on, and trying to pick up on clues and trying to ask deeper questions and just trying to mine their hearts and figure out what's going on in their lives. A part of that not feeling safe, young people over and over again, Generation Z is showing that trust and empathy and transparency and being willing to take the time to get to know them are like big values for them. Yeah. And so as the adults in our life, we have to earn that. We have to earn that trust. We have to show empathy towards them. We have to show them that we're willing to be transparent, and we have to show them that we're willing to take time. And that doesn't happen overnight. And so you get all of 2021 to deal with these 8 things. So and try to put that into practice. Yeah.
So our 2 takeaways today is to look back over this list and identify areas you want to know more about, and just do something in response. Yep. And if there's things that maybe we talked about that maybe hadn't been on your radar before, do a little research. Find out maybe about some things that you didn't know about before. And then number 2 is join us in 2 weeks. Yeah. 2 weeks for our next podcast. And in the meantime, be joining our streams and our social media platforms, different ways you can connect with us, and watch for some other content in the meantime.
Absolutely.
All right. Be abnormal.